Howdy-ho. All right. Hey, Fraser. I got you in a minute. Hold on a sec. Hold on a sec, doggy. Or cat. Hold on a sec. Hold on, Ruby. Hold on. I'm going to feed you. Just relax, okay? Relax. Promise I'll get you, baby. Good evening. How's it going? I got to get a couple of my things set up here real quick. Excuse me. So, cancel that. What's that? Wait, not that. Where's that? Sorry about this. Here we go. There we go. That's almost there. So, hey everybody, how you doing? I was just finishing up walking the dog. Let me take off this ear. You should probably hear me okay through that. Can everybody hear me okay? I just switched my my audio back to the phone. Put on my power cord so we don't get loose juice here. Hey, what's happening? Hi, Corey. Yeah, wow. You know, it's weird. You know, the way this whole process works, I don't know if any of you make videos or do, content or whatever you want to call it, but you go through these, it's like writer's block. You have these moments when you're just like, nothing's coming to you. And then it kind of explodes. You get these like little explosions of creativity and then bam, it kind of comes out of you. So I kind of had a little low the last couple of days. I was doing a lot of lives actually. So this is great. I did an 8-hour, 15-minute live with nonstop, no breaks on Saturday. That was crazy. But the momentum was there. Quinn came on, which is interesting. But no, it hit me today. I had a couple of videos today. I talked about, claiming the right to self-defense, Israel claiming that right to self-defense and how that's absurd given the dynamics. And the reason I came up with that one was I just heard a bunch of people on a live talking about that. Like it was one of these lives where the host is pro-Israel and he's invited me on before to be like, counter argument, which I'm fine doing. But he had this echo chamber of just Zio, bots, like people that are just completely in that mode of all those Zio talking points. And the thing about their style, I don't mind that either. That's okay. But if somebody, my dog's eating my mail. Hey dog, listen, you want to eat my bills? That's fine. Yeah, that's a bill. Go ahead and eat that. Yeah, the dog's eating one of my pieces of mail. Look at that. Go ahead, Ruby, eat the bill so I can't pay it. Anyway. So it's like an echo chamber of Zios, and they're not being what I would call decent. They're calling people names, talking down to them, using terms like they can go to Jordan, we've given them this, we've given them that, like all this despair. It's like they're talking down to people who are of darker skin or of Arab heritage, which I think is so terrible. So anyway, and I was just sitting quietly listening. I got invited on by the host. I'm sitting there for like 20 minutes. He wants me to come on and be a part of this, but it's just vitriol and insults and arrogance and rudeness and a lot of misinformation. And that's just hard to take, right? I mean, that's just garbage. Absolute bullshit. So anyway, that's my little rant for that. But that inspired me to make the video, like the right to self-defense. It's just these arrogant, egotistical people who are like, Jewish supremacists, kind of racists. I don't want to say negative words about people, but if they behave that way, it's the behavior, not the person doing it, right? I'm sure these people have a good side, right? And maybe they're angered by what happened on the 7th, understandably so. But you have to understand, IDF commit field executions in Gaza. Hey, what's up, Em? How you doing? So, I don't know. I mean, I just did another video about the voting thing because the more I listen to people talk, they're like, we really have to get honed in on this election. We really got to get out and make the right candidate. We got to get new people in office. I'm thinking to myself, gosh, all this energy in the wrong direction. I mean, I've done it before. Like when I was younger, I worked on campaigns, both at the federal level and the local level. And you start to realize after a while how the game is set up. And you realize that, you put a lot of work in, you do a lot of stuff, and then for the most part, the big issues, nothing really changes, right? And so it kind of gives you this disheartening feeling. I just did all that work. I spent months and months. I put in hundreds of hours of my time. I made phone calls. I went door-to-door canvassing. And the same shit keeps to happen. The same money keeps flowing between candidates. The same mess that people go into, that so-called swamp, doesn't change, right? People go in with white clothing, the best of people. They come out, they're just covered in mud, right? So can I make all end-all ox? Yeah, I'll do that. Let me see if I can get their name here. Somebody's asking me to add a moderator, so I'm searching for them in my chat so I can click on their name and do it. Okay, I'll be adding them as a moderator right now. Add as a moderator. I guess I'll give them the access to manage the guests, so if anybody's acting up, they can get kicked out. Okay, that part's done. Thank you, Em. So It's frustrating. We all want to be able to do things within the system that is we're told is supposed to function to help out. The way it's taught in school when you're a kid. You have civics, and they tell you about the government, and they tell you about the branches, which is the executive branch, the presidency, the legislative branch, which is the Congress and the Senate, and then you have the judiciary, Supreme Court on down. And you're told that they're checks and balances, and so everything's supposed to work. The people get to speak through their representatives, and the decisions that are made in Congress are supposed to represent the will of the people who elected them through a majority vote. That's the story. But what has since happened, unfortunately, is that the moneyed interests over the last 5, 6, 7, maybe ever, have been the ones who get served by the elected officials, because they come into a system where the pressures, the incentives, and the punishments and the rewards are all geared around helping a certain small group of people. And that's just the way it works. So as long as that is the power dynamic, no matter who you put in, it's not about the players. I like to say, just imagine, snap your fingers right now as a thought exercise. And imagine that all 435 representatives and all 100 senators, all those people are gone. Like, just get rid of all the bad people you don't like Lindsey Graham or, Mitch McConnell or, on the Democratic side, Hakeem Jeffries or whomever, right? They're gone. Totally new pieces of the puzzle. So you elect the people you want, right? Now let's say there's no interference during the elections from the moneyed power. They're still going to get hammered once they're in office, because the ruling class and the national security state run the system, along with some special interest groups like we're seeing with AIPAC. They're the ones who run the show. I just hopped on Eric Warsaw's live. Hey, what's up, Feedy? And one of his guests was talking about the upcoming election and how don't vote third party. We have to vote for the Democrats because the Republicans. I'm thinking to myself, people are still in this mindset. Most people, in fact. Most Americans, and this is not to disparage them, because I was one of them at one point too, right? We all have been. Maybe some still are. But we're still under that illusion that this democratic system, so-called, is supposed to function on our behalf, right? But it doesn't. It's representing a different group of people, and the interests that it serves are not the ones that work for us. I mean, it's evidence based on the behavior, the outcomes. Look, just this. I'll take one example. Okay, let's not even talk about Gaza or Israel. Let's talk about what happened in Hawaii. For those who don't know, there was massive wildfires on the island of Maui. And I've been there before. I've walked in the neighborhoods where these things burned down. And all these homes got destroyed. And a lot of people who were younger and maybe older people that were at home were told not to leave. They sheltered in place and they all got burned to death, right? And so people had this terrible grief, terrible tragedy, maybe like 3,000 or 4,000 people, whoever lived there. And the government gave them a check for $700. Now imagine for a second, your whole life just got ruined. You have no house. You have no clothing. You have nothing but the shirt on your back and the shoes on your feet. And you're working through shelters and trying to help your community out. And the government announces that, oh, we feel so badly for you. We're going to give you this help. We're going to give you $700. In Hawaii, everything's way more expensive because it's an island. $700 doesn't buy you groceries for 2 fucking weeks. So what are you supposed to do with that? And that's how our government treats the average person who doesn't have power within the government. And yet they send over $100 billion earmarked for the Ukrainian war, and perhaps another 14 billion, in addition to the 100 and some billion they've been sending Israel over the decades, to foreign policy stuff. Now, why is that? Because who really makes that money? That money doesn't go to Ukraine. That money doesn't go to Israel. It goes to the weapons manufacturers and the contractors who serve the military-industrial complex that our country allocates the money to. So people call that money laundering. They say that war is a money laundering process because the money that the various treasuries kick out to the effort does not go to the country. It stays in the firms, weapons manufacturers, etc. And who owns those? Well, it's not us. We may have a couple shares in our 401k or what some people have some, right? But the vast majority of those shares in these companies are owned by the top 0.5% of people and the big banks. So that's unavoidable, and it's happening. And that's just one example. All the money that flows through the systems that are in place do the same thing. These disbursements that our government makes, we the people have this thing called the Treasury, and the credit card bill, the national debt, $34 trillion and counting in our country, that is the people's bank account. It's like the people's credit card, right? And we've overdrawn our bank account by $34 trillion. And we have all these unfunded liabilities for Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, et cetera, disability, that kind of thing. So it's a crazy situation. Who's getting that money? Where's that debt going, right? That debt, it's like you're giving money to a company. A charge goes on your credit card. Some person gets it, and let's say you're buying a bottle of shampoo that normally costs $3 or $4. They're selling it for $487. So the government's overpaying for shit. We get the bill, and the profit between the normal price and that outrageous number goes to these investors. That's the game, and that's a bad game, right? But that game has continued and it's gotten worse, just like the situation in Gaza and the West Bank has gotten worse. Same thing over the years. So then the question is, well, Jesus Christ, if this power structure that's in place, between the national security state, the business community, the corporations, the people who have all this money, the banking community, the cartel, and the domestic lobbying groups that lobby for whatever they have interest for, how do we work around that? That's a massive block, like a big obstacle to get things back to right based on how they were intended to be in the Constitution. So, I could ask you, what's your answer, pal, right? It's not an easy thing, right? It's what I think is referred to colloquially as a predicament. Yeah, somebody says, I think that TikTok is limiting your reach. I won't use your language, but I agree with that. They said they had to go to my profile because they knew I was usually going live. It wasn't broadcast out. Maybe that's happening. We only have 166 people. Normally have about 400 or 500 by now. But, these are things I can't control, right? People know my schedule. I've announced my schedule a trillion times. So if they want to come on, they will. But anyway, so, this is part of the same thing I just described. One aspect that covers all these things is the media apparatus. So it's really called the national security corporate state / media landscape. It's like this big takeover. And the media, you ever heard of something called Pepto-Bismol? It's that stuff that takes care of your stomach aches, and it kind of coats everything. And the media is the coating that keeps all this bullshit together and keeps people somehow in line and believing the story, right? You have this big narrative that goes out about we're the force for good, and we take care of people, and we're for democracy, and we stop other people from doing bad things, and blah 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 blah. And it's all a complete lie. The whole thing, top to bottom, is a total farce. So once you get your head around that, at least you're accepting of the reality that you see. You see through the propaganda. You see through the bullshit, there's so many examples. It's painful. WMD, right? There was no WMD. That was a dumb excuse to go. The crisis that happened with the C-19, right? The way that was marketed made a lot of money for a small number of companies who are owned by, guessed it. Hey, stop that, dog. Stop it. Stop doing that. I have a cover on my couch, and the dog's trying to tear it off, so she's... There we go. All right. Sorry about the interruption. So what the media does is the media provides cover, just like we're seeing with what's happening right now, the way the Israeli media and the Israeli forces and elected officials put out this absolutely ridiculous lies, right? It's no different. It's a technique and a practice that's woven into a way of doing things. It's not like 4 people in a room going, ha, 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 ha. But the media landscape, at least in our country, there's like 5 or 6 companies that control every element of distribution of most content. It's absurd. So WMD, Christos, weapons of mass destruction. During the first Iraq war, the way they sold this offensive war, they claimed that Saddam Hussein was developing or had chemical weapons and or was pursuing nuclear weapons of mass destruction. WMD as in dog. So they went in front of the UN and they made their case. Some nations got on board, most didn't, because they thought it was bullshit. And so they had this little coalition of countries like, Great Britain, South Africa, New Zealand, Australia, United States, Canada, that kind of shit. And they invaded Iraq and they deposed Saddam Hussein, right? And the reason it was done was because they were trying to, make the world safe from these weapons. Well, there weren't any weapons. Most people knew that ahead of time. And when the countries went in, why did they go in? Okay, most countries want to use their natural resources for the benefit of their country. So if you have oil under your ground, you want to be able to, extract it yourself, process it and sell it and make the money, right? Well, that doesn't help, foreign corporations and the shareholders who basically own these companies. They're not making any money off that, right? It's when a country nationalizes an industry or resource, it benefits the nation. It's not corporate owned. So to get into these countries, these capitalists, these foreign multinational corporations, they have to have a compliant person in charge of a country. Otherwise, they can't break in. And if they're not getting their hands on the resources, they're pissed. They want in on the gravy, right? So that's people who stand in the way of that and who try to help their country and use the money to help their people are considered enemies of the capital class. And so the capital class, in controlling these various resources like the treasuries of governments and the military and the leadership, they use them as tools to achieve their goals. Everything you see happening in the world is based on what I just said. Everything. Which sucks because you wake up and you come up in this little notion that you're the good guys, right? And you're doing good. No. The US is not the good guys. Never has been. Never will be. Nor is England, nor is any of the aligned countries with the United States. Somebody says we are the good guys. Well, I don't know who your we is, Perk 60, but I will guarantee you this. I have receipts going back to the founding of the country that US is not the good guys. And we could spend 3 hours just going down the list. So if you want to, read a book by a guy named Michael Parenti. Michael Parenti. Parenti. Michael Parenti. He details the history of U.S. empire and all of its, all these sort of dastardly deeds. That, somebody says Russia is the good guys. I would say the Russian leadership is far better than the Western leadership in terms of how it treats its people and how it navigates the changing landscape of trade and economy and military and stuff like that. But I would never make the case that the U.S. is the good guys. It's just, it is. I'd like to be able to support my country and say good things about it, but I'd be lying, right? And I'm not blah with that. I've never figured out any of this stuff on my own. It's always been other people. Let me grab some water real quick. Excuse me. Dog. Yeah, man, when you talk without drinking water, it gets tough. Somebody says Britain is worse. If you mean worse than the U.S., I'll tell you what, I'll take you up on that. Let's go with 100,000. I'll take the U.S. over Britain all day long. Somebody says, yeah. And by the way, here's the thing. I mean, if you're somebody who prefers to chat over talk, that's fine. But if you have a legitimate, I'd say, if you're trying to contest what I'm saying, which is okay, I won't berate you, I won't talk through you, I won't talk over you, and I try to be fair, right? So I'll hear you out, but I will be firm, and I will try to draw from evidence and facts as best I can to try to rebut anything that I think is factually incorrect or that's, from a take or a perception of something that's, I think a little bit one-sided or disingenuous or whatever. So I was in a live today that I got invited to, and the people there who were supporting the Israeli point of view were just going off on people. They were calling them names and, denigrating them and cheering that they'd quote unquote, destroyed them. That's not how I want to. That's not how I want to have my stuff be. I want to be able to have dialogue and talk to people and learn. Hopefully, learn from somebody. Right? That's the goal. So, yeah. There's a poll going on in the top left-hand corner. I don't know why people do this way. Polls should be questions and answers. This is just how to do. Anyway, one thing I would ask you to do, if you don't mind, it's really easy. Just take your finger and tap on my head, and a bunch of hearts will start coming off. And what that does is I guess it boosts the live to other people. So, yeah, somebody says we dropped 2 atomic bombs on Japan, and we did it because we could, not because we needed to. There's been this reason saying that, we did it because we had to. That was bullshit. We did it as a warning to the Soviets, such that if you mess with us, this is the kind of weapons we have. So it kind of, that Cold War started. Yeah, if you don't mind sharing this with people, I like to have enough people to talk to about this stuff. A lot of other content creators, I see people doing this. Rose smells so good. Rose smell. What the fuck is that? And there's like 1,000 people watching that crap. I'm like, is that where our culture is? Where that rose smells so good? I don't know, man. Maybe it's me. Anywho, Let me see if some of the comments here. I don't want to be on a soliloquy, although I tend to do that. If you're somebody who supports Israel, or you take issue with some of the things I'm saying about these issues or other ones, bring it up. Now, one thing that I don't think is smart or productive is to say things like, in general, like, you lie, or you're spreading misinformation, or you don't know the history, or whatever the general thing is. Say something specific, like, hey, the 1967 war was not an aggressive war by Israel. It was a defensive war because of the following reasons. And you can leave 2 or 3 messages and I'll read them. But don't give me this, you're a liar, you don't know the history. That doesn't mean anything. I'm going back to the comments here to see if I can find stuff. Somebody says, can I please discuss why RFK Jr. is not good for Palestine? Wow, I mean, that's an easy answer. He's a total Zionist. I mean, like, unapologetically an uninformative Zionist. He's probably the least informed, most completely brainwashed fool as far as it comes to pro-Israel. It's so bad, it's painful. He repeats all the talking points lock, stock, and barrel that are all completely 180 degrees wrong. He's been fed a strong diet of propaganda, or he's being disingenuous. And I thought the guy was smart, but the more I look at him, he seems like he's honestly embracing the points he's raising about Israel. But if he is, he does all this other work to uncover all these sort of hidden things from corporations and, the whole corporate capture and the government and stuff. So he's like, he praises himself for kind of seeing through the maze and figuring shit out. Well, if he takes that same approach towards the Israel-Palestine thing and does some reading or just watches a video or two, he would know the deal. So there's something going on there. It doesn't seem right, but I don't know. But he's a disaster for the Israel-Palestine issue. I mean, if you're someone who's pro-Israel, he's great, right? Yeah, and here's the thing. A lot of people were excited about him because he was everywhere for like 3 months, like on everybody's podcast and talk show and YouTube channel. And he was saying a lot of things that people agreed with as far as, getting through some of the bullshit we were talking about earlier. And so people were warming up to him and like, hey, maybe this guy has a chance. I hope he does. And then he started doing this. He made like a little tour with Rabbi Shmuley Bayatak, or whatever the guy's name is. And it was like, holy shit. Like, all the good you felt in this guy, it's like a balloon, and all the air just kind of went right out of it. And 99% of the people that liked him just left. They're like, okay, next. RFK, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., son of the former Secretary of State for John F. Kennedy, who was assassinated in 1968 in California when he just won the primary. He was looking like he was going to get elected president or beat a Democratic nominee. And he got killed in a kitchen by, people say, this Palestinian named Sirhan. I think he was shot by his guards. Yeah, I mean, I think somebody's saying about the fact that it was Netanyahu who got the story about WMD. He's been in front of the Congress and in front of the UN harping on that forever about Iran and other nations, Iraq. And I have no doubt that it's very likely, I can't prove it, I'm not saying that with this with certainty, TikTok, please don't boot me, but it seems to be there's been some involvement, and other people have spoken to this, that there's been some involvement in some of these major events that have taken place from the Israeli side, either the Mossad or some other part of their apparatus, where they may have had some involvement in both what went on October 7th as well as what happened back in September 2001 in the United States. And I think that's more likely than less likely. Somebody says, have I seen the field schmexecutions? What I have seen is I've heard stories about the bulldozers. I've seen that women and children who have been in different residential buildings or churches or schools have been, sniped. But I haven't seen anything about open field, schmexecutions. Let me look that up really quickly because I was doing a lot of work on video editing today. Hey, Ruby, hey. Come here. Damn, that dog will chew anything. She was chewing it. Stay. She was chewing up the leash that I got her. Sorry, chewing something else. Yeah, dogs like to chew, right? Okay, so I don't know about this schmexecution thing. Let's try to keep some language TikTok doesn't like. Anything that has a violent connotation, try to use some sort of put some dashes or underscores. I don't know how the game is played. I just don't want to get kicked off again for that stuff. No, the dog's just enjoying chewing stuff. She's not looking for attention. Trust me. She just likes to gnaw on stuff. Well, somebody says here if the U.S. initiated a conflict against the state of Yemen, well, remember, it's not the state of Yemen, which is in flux, by the way. It's the Houthi rebels, which is a proxy from the Iranians who support them, that are doing the piracy, or the, what do you want to call it? And it's also some people from the other side of Africa, right there, that are doing it too. There's some of both going on. Do I think we're headed for W to 3? I doubt it. I mean, unless... listen, the chessboard is about moves, just like chess, right? So it really depends on how far Israel takes this thing. If they continue to push and flatten and push and flatten and push and flatten and squeeze the people of Gaza into ever smaller places, I think at some point somebody's going to intervene. I don't think they're going to be allowed to push them completely out into the desert and get away with it unscathed. But nobody wants a regional conflict. That's what the U.S. is trying to balance right now, is the sort of the maniacal hardliners in Israel who are kind of just going crazy right now versus what they know needs to be a political stability of some type in the future. So those are the factors being weighed right now. Yeah, listen, I hope to God we're not going to get into a world war, because then I think nuclear weapons are going to be involved, which will be the end of everything. What's up? Hey, Ro. How you doing? Yes, I mean, that's the danger, right? That is the number one wild card that none of us can predict, is nuclear weapons. Nobody in the guest queue yet. But seriously, if you're somebody who is in disagreement with me, I'm not going to get mad at you. In fact, I like it. I very rarely get anybody who comes up who wants to disagree. So if you're somebody who does disagree, if you think that what I'm saying is bonkers, because a lot of people think that about me, trust me, my own family included, it's okay. I won't get mad at you. I won't be mean to you. Somebody's in the guest queue. I think it's, I have Nate Fliposki and Shakeen Hola. Let's bring up Nate, and then Shaquille will be next.
Hey, Chip, how are you? And
well, how are you?
just as a reminder, chipbarnesonline@gmail.com.
Don't overwhelm me with email, but I don't know why you put that out, but okay.
Well, you shared it. That's why I wanted to remind people. You said people can contact you.
No, well, what I do, Nate, is when somebody needs to contact me, I share it. I don't want to put my email out and have 55,000 people asking me questions about this, that, and the other. But I know you're not trying to do it on purpose.
No, I was trying to help you, but
No, I appreciate it.
I apologize.
No,
So
it's all
somebody put a comment in here. So Yemen Houthi are shooting missiles at aid ships, and Saudi Arabia and Qatar announced, I don't know, late last week, they will stop sending aid to Gaza because of the missile attacks. So just to be clear, somebody said that was false in the comments. That is true. I would encourage them to go look that up.
What's the reference for that? Do you have some sort of like maybe Newsweek or something? Who talked about that?
Well, I saw it from Saudi Arabia News. I don't know what it was because I use Google Translate. But
So
but
maybe
it would
what you
be
could do,
Saudi Arabia.
if you're open to it, rather than us kind of stewing in this sort of ignorance, if you can either get the news source, you don't have to translate it for us, but just give us some sort of a web reference of the news site, whatever the actual name is, and then we can all go do our due diligence. But that sort of
Well,
third party referencing is
I
tough to
would
get.
tell you. I mean, I could go do that, Chip. So I'll go do that. I can't do that and then flip back screens because then I get an echo. I don't know if that's an Android thing
Yeah,
or, but sure, I'll go find that for you. But
that'd be great.
that it's unfortunate. Also, $100 million in aid from the U.S. was approved by the White House, and that's on WhiteHouse.gov.
100 million.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard about that. Yeah,
So. Um,
yeah.
and also in 2021, the United Nations gave $4.5 billion to Gaza, and 20% of the United Nations is funded by the U.S. 50% is funded by U.S., France, Germany, Japan, and the U.K. So America's contribution in 2021 to Gaza was $1 billion.
Yeah, I just read that on here. It says in 2020 from this is the thing, just to clarify. So from 2014 to 2020 over a six or
Maybe it
seven
was
year period.
from 20, it was 20, but then in 2021, it was $500 million from the US on
Yeah, there
top
was.
of the United Nations, 4.5 billion.
Yeah, so that was a much bigger kick, obviously, than usual because over a 7 year period, it was 4.5 billion. Well, it's about the same, I guess. It's about $600 billion a year. So yeah, I mean that's a lot of money, right? And I guess think one of the arguments is from the Israeli side is that why doesn't more of that make it to the people, right? That's one of the arguments we hear a lot is why are the leaders absconding with money? That's what leaders do, doing it in the
Well,
U.S. all the
Yasser
time.
Arafat, when Yasser Arafat passed away and he was an admitted T, he was worth $4 or $5 billion, and that's a long time ago. So that would be $10 billion today.
I don't know the veracity of that, but I can certainly take a look at it. But
Yeah, I mean,
let's
you
put
could
it
look
this
it up.
way.
I mean, it was in multiple billions,
Let's
more
put it
than
this way.
Trump.
Whatever the numbers are, that leaders tend to do things to benefit themselves more than their people in certain cases, which is sad. But that's just the seems to be the reality of how people behave nowadays, or probably forever. So
Yeah, so my point is America is humanitarian, and the state of Israel was a humanitarian effort, and giving money to Gaza is a humanitarian effort. So
yeah, that
anyway,
makes sense.
I appreciate you letting me up here, and
Sure.
I'll leave it to somebody else.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Have a good evening. Appreciate it. All right. Yeah, the money that goes through some of these processes is pretty impressive, right? Pretty shocking. Shaquille, Shukeel, I think it's spelled.
Hey there, Chip. How you doing?
Hello. Good.
Hear me? Okay.
I can hear you. Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah. So I was going to say earlier on, I think there was some mention of a bulldozer attack, and I saw the video. Absolutely horrific.
Yeah.
There's a group of youths standing in front, maybe throwing stones at a bulldozer. This is a
Hmm.
60-ton armored bulldozer that
Wow.
you'd need RPGs to take out. Okay. And the one of the boys trips up and the bulldozer driver moves forward and repeatedly slams the bucket with big teeth onto the boy, tearing his body apart, basically crushing him,
Yeah.
and then scoops him up, picks him up with one of the teeth of the bulldozer bucket, and the body hanging, and you can see the legs all shredded and hanging.
Okay, well, yeah,
I mean, he just
listen. No, hold on. I gotta mute you. We can't be going to that level
sorry,
of detail. I'm just be very clear.
yeah,
You're gonna
sorry.
get this down.
Sorry about yeah, sorry about that. It's just that this is horrific. Anyway, I'll change the subject on that.
Well, you can
I
describe it in
think
ways that
the
don't involve the actual specifics. Like it's like you could say someone got raped without talking about every single move the person made in the process, right?
did TikTok really go to these extremes on picking this up?
Well,
I'm finding
I've
that
had
that's
lives.
quite
I've had
puzzling.
lives dropped in the middle 4 times.
Oh, really? My apologies. I didn't know. So, I mean, the gentleman who was just on asking about Yasser Arafat being worth how many billions? I mean, these are Zionist narratives. There's never been any evidence that's ever produced for any of
Yeah,
this.
I agree.
Um, and there's a lot of things that you can say, read and Google up, and you'll find anything that you want, and you'll find Zionist lies because this is what they're very very good. They're the masters of projection, and so they
Well,
project their own
the,
crimes on other people.
yeah, the article says that there was suspicion that he had as much as $1 billion at his time of death. That's not billions.
No, and I mean, a billion at that time years ago would have been a huge amount of money.
Yeah.
Nowadays, a billionaire's poor. You've got to be a multi-billionaire
Well,
to
not
be
quite.
worth
I
talking about.
understand.
You know, and it's like we nowadays nobody ever refers to millionaires. We think like, forget that. It's multi-billions now. I mean, there's never been any evidence produced of any of these allegations. It's absolute, as far as I'm concerned, a load of nonsense.
Hoax.
And when they do, yeah, and when they do talk about sort of aid money that goes into Gaza and West Bank perhaps as well, what they're forgetting is the hundreds of billions since 1948 that has been sponged away by the Zionist entity, while 70 million Americans would not have a meal if it was not for food stamps. You have food aid stamps in the USA. You call them food stamps, I think, over there, yeah? And I'm assuming there's some sort of voucher that you exchange for food in the supermarkets.
Yeah.
I mean, this is shocking. You've got and by the way, it's not 3.8 billion a year that goes to the Zionist entity. It's 10 billion, because you're not taking into account cancelled loan interest from previous years, etc.
Yeah.
So debt relief, it amounts to about 10 billion a year that this very wealthy little theft entity, it's a crime syndicate, because that's what it is. Okay, it's a global arms trafficking trade. It's a global body and organ trafficking center. The biggest case ever of human trafficking and organ trafficking was in New York. They were all rabbis, about 60 or 70 of them. Okay, all dual national.
I saw that arrest. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's not just happened once. This has happened there are many, many occasions of this. They're also the major players in the drug trade. They're the major players behind the casinos, etc. And the original mafia were not Italians. It was this bunch, the Khazars. It should be called the Khazari mafia, not the Italian mafia. Bugsy Siegel was not an Italian Catholic. I think you can work it out yourself by what he was, etc. But the thing is, these Zionists, despite everything that is happening, two Christian women who were unalived, was it today? Just yesterday. An elderly woman in the church courtyard, just popping out to use the ladies, gets sniped, struck by us. Yeah, and then her daughter goes to her rescue, also gets struck. And then Mark Regev appeared, the Zionist ambassador. Yeah, he's on British TV with Piers Morgan, saying it's an accident, fog of war. There is no fog. This is just unbelievable, blatant lies that are told, and he keeps a straight face. I'm staggered how this man keeps. I mean, he's been on our TV screens for years. This Mark Regev, and he's so practiced and polished in his lies, and maybe it's why he's got the job that he's got, because he can lie and he can obfuscate with a straight face. Now, unless you've got a bit of an education behind you, or you've got some brains behind you, you might fall for his lies and get brainwashed. Because who is he talking about? He's talking about brown-skinned Arabs, these savages. So it's very, very easy to fall for his tropes against Muslims and Arabs who don't look like him. And the lies are just absolutely staggering. I just, if it's like right now, after watching that little boy, despite all the crimes that they've been committing, and when they've sniped people, it's not been caught on camera, for example. They've had to admit it because, there were witnesses there. You would think they would rein in or reel in their war crimes. But
Shaquille, real quick, we don't want to go too much. We have a lot of people waiting, but if you want to,
sorry, my friend, no problem. Yeah. I'm going to let you carry on, but it's staggering. Their vile actions and their cruelty is beyond all human comprehension. Thank you, brother. God bless you for all the great work you're doing.
Appreciate that. Nice comment. Thank you very much for the kind words. Yeah, I've done videos about this, and this is where I think it comes from. Obviously, when you have behavior that is indefensible and there's no way to make it sound good, you have to find a narrative to kind of create an alternative version of reality around it. So that includes excluding certain things, lying, obfuscating, reframing. In fact, it's a whole playbook that the Israelis have published for their public relations to perform all these things. That's very specific in different situations. So You know, it's been a way of life since the creation, since the whole Zionist movement began. And I'm not disparaging Jewish people. This is a different thing than Jewish people. Be very clear. I always make these distinctions. I think you have to. So basically, you have people. This is how they look at things. And again, it's a way of going through life. There are two things. There's what supports their point of view and what doesn't. And there's no objective truth. You and I would say that, if there's water falling outside, it's raining. And they would say, no. There's different weather patterns, and sometimes there's this. And they're like, dude, it's raining. There is no object. There's just an argument in favor of their side and everything that goes against that. Those are the two things. And it's a weird way to go through a conversation with somebody because they're not willing to acknowledge basic things that you and I would consider just objective. There is no objectivity. Okay. Let's go with I think Mighty Slave Danny and then Abd something on it.
Hey Chip,
Hey.
when I'm reading it's time for revolution, what do you mean by that?
A lot of people use this as a slogan, feeling that given that things are very tied up in terms of the electoral system, that some other path to change is going to be required. This is something that's been talked about for since the eons began, back in different nations, stuff like that. The question is, it's a statement that's used towards kind of claiming a general sense of things that the traditional process that would normally be used to affect change is blocked off. So it's time for other means of achieving change. It doesn't refer to violence. A revolution is not necessarily a violent thing. A revolution is a shaking up of the guard. It's a shift.
Um, the I guess yeah, that's a good point. I mean, not all revolutions require violence. Like we seen in India. I think with Gandhi, he did it through peace, and that's kind of what he promoted. But I feel like with people, like you gave a good example. You would say that it's raining, and they would even argue with you on that. You would say the sky is blue, and they would argue with you on that, right?
Right.
Just like in Gaza, it's a clear G side, and they'd argue with you on that.
Oh,
Look,
they are.
10,000. You like literal. There's, and this is why if you look at scripture, they vilify it and they want to censor it. And historically, we've seen that scriptures have been tampered with, mainly the Torah and the Bible, the gospel. Not just by early church fathers such as Jerome the Martyr, who openly admitted to corrupting the translation into Latin, but also, verses that just get added in, or like the Pope that can just change a law and justify it. So it makes me wonder if these people are willing to change or distort something that is so sacred. They don't have any boundaries. They're willing to do it all.
Well, I think there are people that fundamentally are it's like the ends justify the means, and so lying is just a small part to them. It's just no big deal. It's just, it doesn't even factor into the thinking. It's an afterthought.
Yeah, and it. And when I see the people of Gaza having such firmness in their faith, there's people that argue that if there is a higher power, then why will that just loving higher power allow suffering?
Well, that's a pretty broad
And
question.
then you go and
Uh,
you look at the people. Sorry?
I said it's a
Sorry?
very broad question, and a lot of people have asked that over the millennia. Was that rhetorical, or were you actually literally?
Right. And then you look at the oh no, because no, I was just saying like, well,
Are you Ubering right
I
now,
was
Steve?
getting a message, but the point. I'm sorry.
I said, are you
What
driving
was that?
for Uber? That was the Uber ride request sound.
Yeah. I do, right. I do that. You know, because I'm escaping I feel like a job like that is a way to escape Matrix, in my opinion. I used to have a corporate job in finance where I worked for these Zionist corporations, and I did pretty
Mm-hmm.
well on the financial aspect. But knowing who I was serving, uh, made me actually ties with that demonic entity that prowls on people's wishes by
You
implementing
know, it's just
usury
like
on
it's no different with it's no
others
different
but
with Uber.
themselves. In what sense?
I've driven for Uber too. It's no different. What you're claiming that you used to work for and what you're currently doing is no different.
Can you provide a example?
Yeah, the shareholders of Uber,
I don't understand yes.
the primary shareholders of Uber
Uh-huh.
and the primary ownership structure of who you used to work for are identical.
Perfect. So I guess that wasn't my point. My point is that with Uber, the mission statement of Uber and what the job consists of, and the fact that an Uber driver is an independent contractor to where they can utilize the same tax code to their advantage that the billionaires are using, is much different than a person who works directly for a corporation that serves the direct interests of the pockets of the extreme Zionist teas, and also having to pay taxes to system that funds a G side. So as a driver, which is one of the things that I do, I also have an else where I also utilize the tax code as well
Right.
to my advantage. This actually gives me, it's not. I don't see it as the same for that point. But my whole point is that where I was going with it, where I was kind of going with
Mhm.
that, is these people that are currently occupying Palestine. You know, it's hard to make peace with such people. Uh, you know, who are justifying the current actions that they're taking upon the indigenous population of Palestine. How can I sit at a table and negotiate peace with someone who believes that a baby should be unalived? And I've been thinking about that for a while. How can I bring this? How can I wake this person up? And then what also triggers in my mind is that, wait a minute, well, you can't, because these people unalived sacred individuals held in scripture. So I feel like the only solution here to these teas on humanity, not just on the Palestinians. I mean, they want to implement the same measure that they're implementing in Palestine. They actually want to do that everywhere, not just Palestine. I mean, people think that it's just a Palestinian issue. It's not. It's actually a global issue. And the shocking thing is that the people of Gaza are actually standing up for the world, not just for them. And you say it's money. I see someone in the comment that says it's a flawed argument because it's money. Well, I actually worked in money, right? I actually directly in finance. And I can tell you that it's beyond money. It's an ideology. And that ideology is willing to lose money. They're willing to lose money to push their ideology. I mean, you look at the 20 trillion that was spent in Iraq and Afghanistan. To do what? Replace them with someone that they didn't want to be in, that they were going there to. Yeah. You look at the billions that have been lost, Starbucks, right? Or McDonald's, or Zara, or H&M. It's not about money. It's about an ideology. And someone mentions Piers Morgan. Look, Piers Morgan is just doing his job. I mean, I think he was on an interview with Tate, and Andrew Tate told him, you're not allowed to.
Sorry, it's hard for me to get a word in edgewise with the way you're moving on. I was just going to ask you to clarify when you say it's not about money, it's about ideology. Can you clarify what you mean by that? Still with us?
Yeah. Sorry, my app kind of froze.
I was asking if you could clarify what you mean by it's not about money, it's about ideology.
Yeah. So
I've never seen us clarify that.
money is definitely a goal. Oh, can you hear me? Am I again? Clearly.
Yeah, we're breaking up here. Let me do this. Come on back in after you just close out of your what I do when this happens to me is I close out of my TikTok app and then I come back in and I refine the live and then it usually works. So if you come back, I'll let you finish. Okay, we have Abdul Al Mabani or something. I'm not sure how you pronounce your name.
Hey, how are you?
Yeah,
Sorry for my English.
okay.
I just want to say one thing. In the last 2 months, I thought that Palestine is only the country that occupied. Then I thought that Arab countries who can't help them are also occupied. Then when I saw the people in your countries in the street, so the whole world is occupied because nobody is accepting.
Yeah.
So who is controlling the world?
Well, right now the primary power structure is the United States.
Okay, so we are in Arab countries. We are already occupied, like in different ways.
Mhm.
So you're responsible of what's happening.
When you say you, do you mean the United States government or who are you referring to?
Your government also your people, but in different percent.
Do you think that the Palestinian people who are being bombarded by the Israelis and dying in large numbers are responsible for what the H group did?
Sorry.
Do you think that the civilians in Gaza that are dying in large numbers under the bombardment of the Israeli military are responsible for what the H group did, what Hamas did?
No.
Yeah, why are the innocent civilians of the United States responsible for what its government is doing?
Because we live in different society. We don't speak your language. Your government speak the same language, the same society, the same culture. So we are like you can understand your government more than us. So you had to know before this that your government is making crimes everywhere.
Well, you can make that statement. I would argue that most people in the United States don't know that they are treated by a media system that purposely keeps them ignorant and makes them think the exact opposite. So it's not that I think that people are intentionally being mean-spirited and supporting crimes as you refer to them as, but those crimes happen out of eyesight and therefore they're not aware of them and they're told by their government and their media that they're the good guys and what they're doing is for democracy and freedom. And therefore the public doesn't even know what you're alleging.
If our country, like one of our country, is attacking or occupying or pumping your country, then I tell you we don't know.
Well, let me make something clear from my point of view.
How much you are like I don't know what to say. Like if my country attack your country, then I say I don't know. I live in the same country who attack your country, then I don't know.
But the point I'm trying to make to you is that I don't expect the citizens of I don't even know which country you're from. Let's say you're from I don't know Iraq or Syria. Let's say the Syrians attack the Americans in the Eastern Mediterranean, which is certainly possible. I wouldn't go after the average Syrian citizen and try to blame them or hurt them for what their government is choosing to do, because they may disagree. You're making an assumption that the population, because of their inability to stop their country, agrees with it, but is basically in cahoots or basically, what do you call that, complicit with their country. And I don't agree with that. I think that's not an accurate statement.
Agree or disagree is not enough. If we just say I agree or I don't agree, and you see people are killed, it is like we are not just we are speaking about people are dying. We are not speaking. So if you say just agree or I don't agree, I don't know.
Well, let's look at the numbers for a second. Just to let you know, there's a large portion of the American population that's very set against what's happening. So they've been very vocal. They've been protesting. So here's my question to you. I'll turn this around for you. What do you suggest the American population do to stop its government from what it's doing?
I hear that you paying taxes for your government, and you know that this money is going for Israeli country to control the whole world. I realize that we all are brainwashed. Like before, maybe 10 years, I thought we are like maybe we are really terrorists. There is something wrong with us. Then I realized that everywhere we are brainwashed. Not in our country only. Like your country, you speak the same language, you live in the same culture, and you don't know what we should do if we live in different country, in different culture. How we know?
Well, I think something you're doing here. First of all, I agree with your anger, and I agree with your feeling helpless like we do that these horrible things are happening. And why would the United States be doing such a horrible thing by agreeing with or supplying the money, the weapons, the munitions, the support militarily and diplomatically at the United Nations? Why would the United States do this, knowing how horrible it is? And why would the American citizens, in your opinion, be supportive of it? Because they're not doing anything to stop it. And I understand that anger. Here's the part of the puzzle I think you're missing. There are people like me and many, many others who are activists, and we're very critical of our government. We're trying to get them to stop all of these things. The challenge is, and if you follow my videos, you'll see this, and you can transcribe them into whatever your native language is. It's very difficult in this country, the way that the power structures work. I just did a video about it 15 minutes before I started this live that talk about this very issue. They are impenetrable. Over the last 40 or 50 years, the corporate/national security state machine has completely taken over all of the normal apparatus within government so that it makes it impossible for the citizens to affect what the government does. So therefore, even if every single person in the United States was on your side, which most are, some aren't, but even if everyone was on your side, there's nothing we can do to stop our government. That's reality, unless we do a violent overthrow of the government. And that's not
Yes,
going to happen.
I understand, but I just want to say that your responsibility is more than anybody, because you are the people in the same country, in the same nationality.
Well,
But from your I understand you, people like you who can talk and clear everything for normal people that is still brainwashed. You can help them, like
But
people
the
like
point is,
you.
what I'm trying to say though is, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I get your point. My question is, I've just told you what the problem is for us to change our government's choices. Whether we agree or not is irrelevant at this point. If 100% disagreed, like I just told you, you don't want the people to support what's going on via their government. We have no say. We have no ability to change the government unless we change the government, like literally replace the government. And that's not going to be done easily. They have a huge military, a huge police force, a lot of prisons, and a lot of other tools they can use to make it extremely difficult for the population to accomplish something like that. It's not going to happen. So it's an unrealistic expectation and an unrealistic accusation and charge against the population who have no choice anyway. Well, what would I say to another country if their leader did something? Look at Egypt. There's no way for the Egyptian population to tell their government what to do. I wouldn't fault the Egyptian citizens just because I disagreed with the Egyptian government's doing in a conflict. So I just think you're being a little unfair, but I understand your anger.
I agree. Yes, I just want to say that people like you who can help your because you are you're. I think the whole world is occupied, because you tell me that you can't do nothing, we can't do nothing. So who is controlling the world?
Well, we could do something. Let me we could do something. Okay, what our country could do if we really wanted to, if enough people understood what I just described and they decided in their heart they wanted to change it, no matter what, no matter the risk, if that was their decision, then they could do something about it. But the risk is very, very, very high for the average person, and they're scared that they'll be either imprisoned or hurt or not live through it. And those are big fears for people. And therefore, if they don't know what the outcome is going to be, they're very reluctant to get involved in something. If you're given a guarantee that if you go out and do something, it'll work, then you're more likely to do it. but there's no guarantee. So why should you take that risk, right?
Yes. I just want to thank you. Many people, because they live in without war in normal life, they don't care. But when you speak, when you take care of this problem, sorry for my English, but
No, it's
thank
good.
you.
Yeah, it was very good. You brought up a good point. Thank you for sharing it. That's good information. I mean, that's how a lot of people are probably feeling about the United States. I totally understand that. Yeah, I mean, that's what I said. We're not the good guys, and most people around the world look at the U.S. and they call it the Great Satan. The Iranians say the U.S. is the Great Satan. I can understand why they claim that the country, our government, and the people that support the government and control the government policy at the highest levels are bad, because that entity does bad things that really hurt people, mess up the environment. Basically, they run across the world roughshod, doing whatever they want as much as they can, just as the Israelis are doing now in the West Bank and in Gaza. Very similar, hard-handed approach. It's the hammer, not the handshake. And it's a tough thing for countries to deal with because the U.S. has enough power to get away with it, or at least has since World War II. But it is changing, at least on the international front, with the changing financial breaking of Russia and India and China and all these countries that are kind of going off the U.S. system, or at least trying to. So that's encouraging, but it's going to take some time. All right, let's go with Khalil, and then we'll go to Marwa. I hope I was fair with him. I wasn't trying to be too harsh.
Yo, what's up?
Hey.
So I just wanted to say I think we're gonna see the fall of Israel and also like Western homogeny as we know it, like within the coming
Okay.
years, simply off of like how brutal they're being openly, and people don't like it, and yeah, I think we've seen this happen before, and obviously the colonizer playbook is like very redundant. When pilgrims came to North America and used religion as a guise to persecute the Native Americans. That's all we're seeing with Israel. And yeah, after a while, it's just going to get played out and people can't keep doing it.
How do you see it playing out in terms of, you said that you don't think that the state of Israel is going to exist. Do you think that from the river to the sea will mean that people will go back to living the way they were before 1948? Or how do you see it? What does it look like? What does the putty look like as it gets molded?
So the thing is, they reported about a month ago that 500,000 Israelis, almost 500,000 Israelis, had left Israel because of the ongoing aggression. A lot of those people are not coming back. And the thing is, for a settler colonial state to exist, you need the people to live there. You need to have people living in the homes that you're stealing from people, because if they're not occupying the space, then the people will just come back, And the thing is, Israeli citizens, like, it kind of sucks because obviously we don't want to conflate Israeli citizens with the government. But
Right.
over the age of 18, you're like required to enlist. So Israeli citizens, even though they are like quote unquote citizens, they are a standing army. A lot of them are armed and a lot of them
Right.
do have military training. And the thing is, like, we cannot just like overlook the fact that those are like, for all intents and purposes, soldiers who are maybe off duty, but they are still very much like armed and ready to take land. And we
Yeah.
see from obviously their social media trends that are coming out, their number one trending song in Israel, like they are very anti-Palestinian and they're
Right.
very like genocidal in like their actions. And it's getting played out. Like people are seeing it for what it is.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think one of the big problems, I think it's not serving the state of Israel well, is the sheer extent and scope of the brutality that they're letting the world see. And before, they were able to control the messaging and the narrative in such a way that they could pretty much do what they wanted and it wouldn't come back to them. But with the fragmented social landscape, I mean, you hear certain people in Congress calling for the removal of apps like this, like TikTok. And the reason is because it's an avenue of dissemination of information to a large number of people, especially younger people throughout the world, who are just aghast at what the Israelis are doing. It's angering people, it's shocking people, and that gives Israel a terrible reputation. And as these people get older, they're gonna remember this stuff, right? This is a big injustice that's been supported in all the wrong ways, and so. This is a stain on the history of both the U.S. and Israel that'll never go away, in my opinion.
Yeah, it definitely is. And it's insane because like people overlook the fact that Israel and America's histories both are extremely violent and extremely bloody. And oftentimes they are not on the right side of history. And yeah, I don't understand why so many people are like full-heartedly supporting what's going on while also being able to access all this information, like these very vivid, and, like violent images coming out of these states. And also like just the clownery that's coming out of the soldiers. Like we're seeing them like have dance parties and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Like no, it's no one respects them. And I think yeah, Israel's gonna fall just because when we look at it, Israeli soldiers are not trained for combat. Israeli soldiers are trained to brutalize teenagers, to evict people from their homes,
Right.
but they are fighting against Hamas, who has already been involved in multiple conflicts in the region. And the thing is, it's like if NYPD was to fight Al Qaeda. Like NYPD, they are strong only when they're in positions of like clear power. When they're dealing with
Right.
civilians, they like to brutalize people. Like when it's just regular like pedestrians. But if they were
Right.
to fight actual soldiers, they would stand zero chance. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing so many casualties on the Israeli side. They're hiding a
Yeah.
lot of the numbers to keep the morale going. But at the end of the day, like you can only pretend that you're winning for so long. After a certain amount, it's gonna become very like evident.
So we have somebody in the chat named Aaron who said that I think he's referring to you, the guest. He says you are so misinformed and wrong. So I would invite Aaron to come up. It'd be fun to have the two of you. Seem like someone who's pretty knowledgeable and pretty well studied and has some good ideas on the broader context. So Aaron, if you'd like to come up, I'd love to have you come up and speak your mind and share your piece. It'd be fun to hear what you have to say. And I will
Yeah.
not I won't just let you know, Aaron. I won't belittle you. I won't mistreat you. I won't be mean spirited about it. Give you a chance to really say what you have to say. Anyway, please continue until Aaron comes up.
Oh no, yeah, it's just insane. And also the fact that we are seeing like the clear propaganda, like the Israeli army pretty much putting out videos and footage of like Hamas members like giving up or what is it, turning in their weapons or whatever.
Yeah,
But it's like very clear from the photos. It's not even like well put together. It's very obvious that those are just like civilians that you handed some weapons to, and then you were like, Let's take these photos for photo ops." It's crazy
yeah.
because
It's
like an army who was genuinely winning would not have to do things like that in order to boost morale for their troops or
yeah,
boost morale for the people back in your country. And the thing is, like the H group, they're like posting videos all the time of them like actually destroying tanks, targeting troops.
right.
Hezbollah as well. The Houthis recorded a whole video of them seizing a ship. Like that stuff actually gets morale going. All Israel has is like, oh, we've bombed hospitals, we bombed refugee camps, and then like we find guns and incubators. Like it's not making sense. None of it is adding up. And not only is their reputation like in their reputation is changing in the eyes of the world. Like we're all starting to kind of see them as a clown, but also in like the war landscape, like no one is really respecting them anymore because they're realizing if you do not have the military backing of America and all these bombs that they're supplying you, then you have like no ability to defend yourself. And all it took was Yemen like cutting off the Red Sea, and Israel is gonna collapse with that alone. That's why they're moving all these boats out there because they know if Israel cannot get their shipments, once a month of military bombs straight from the States, then like they have nothing stopping the people from removing themselves from the concentration camp that is Gaza and returning to the homes that were stolen from them.
Yeah, I think that in terms of collapse, I mean, we've seen what the U.S. is willing to do to support the actual administrative apparatus and economic apparatus of Ukraine, which is much more difficult. I think in a second, the U.S. would provide whatever Israel needed through the Mediterranean if the Red Sea becomes choked off. But, I think that's evident. But you bring up some really good points. And I don't know exactly how it's going to play out. I do think that Israel is doing itself a disservice with what it's doing, as is the U.S. And, I know the population's pissed in many ways. And even a lot of people in Israel are pissed that the Netanyahu government is, one, not making a big enough effort to return the hostages, which is a big deal right now in Israel. And two, the soldiers in Israel that are going into Gaza, that are basically finding people who are still in the north that are stranded, they're horribly mistreating them. They're taking men and stripping them down and marching them around and taking pictures. And they're humiliating people, which is what they do. They've been able to bruise and knock around old women and kids and shoot kids in the knees and the gut and whatever for as long as you can remember. But as soon as they come up against a hardened, battle-ready adversary that has a great strategic advantage as well as a much different mindset and disposition,
And
these aren't
also they have an advantage because
yeah. These
Oh, I'm
aren't people that
sorry.
were
I was just
planning
saying
on.
they also have an advantage because they're in the land. That's like their land. These are lands they've been in for generations and generations. So
Yeah, they know the
it's
terrain.
like exactly. So it's they I don't think they have a really good chance of watching this play out in their favor.
Well, they've had a lot of
Like,
trouble.
man.
They've had a lot of trouble in Lebanon as well as Gaza over all the incursions they've ever done on the ground. They have a great air force, obviously, and they can bomb the crap out of whomever because it's all U.S. backed and trained and equipment. But their ground forces,
Yeah,
like you said, these are kids that are TikTokers that were on the beach in Tel Aviv a month ago. They're not hardened
yeah.
fighting.
I'm like, you guys are fighting with Hezbollah, but Hezbollah stopped ISIS. Like, ISIS is honestly more terrifying than any Israeli soldier, I would assume. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's
no
not
doubt.
it's not looking good for them, especially seeing as they've focused a lot of their troops around to surround Gaza in an effort to like try to invade. But that has made their northern border extremely weak. And if Hezbollah decides that one day, okay, we're gonna push the issue because Israel is trying to escalate that war to get US troops involved, but if Hezbollah decides to press the issue on the northern border, Israel cannot hold that front, especially seeing as for the last 2 months, Hezbollah has been destroying their defensive capabilities on the northern border. Like all of the security, all of their radars, anything that could have helped prevent like, the movement of their troops into Israel, like that stuff is destroyed. And the ground troops are not going to do it. Infantry is not going to like protect the people, especially against guys who are like actually fighting in like the Syrian civil war and like all kinds of like crazy, conflicts in the region.
Yeah, there's a guy
Man,
named Scott Ritter. There's a guy named Scott Ritter. For anybody who's not following Scott Ritter, Night Viv, that does an excellent job analyzing these very things you're talking about. We do have to let some other folks come up. Unfortunately, Aaron, you've been great. You've been a great contributor to the conversation. So thank you so much.
no, thanks.
Or I'm sorry, Khalil, not Aaron. Aaron was the guy that wanted to talk to you. I apologize. I think we had Marma next. Yeah, thank you, Khalil. That was really good, by the way. I think a lot of people in the chat really enjoyed that contribution. So thank you. We have Marwa and then Epi Revolution and then Plasmatia or something. I apologize. I can't pronounce these names to save my life.
Hello, Chip. How are you today?
Good. I'm good. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. I really want to thank you and to appreciate what you're doing for Palestinian people and for humanity. And I want to apologize, maybe on behalf of Abdul Halim, maybe the person before Khalid, because maybe yeah, he was a little bit angry. And I thank you for understanding. And you were very patient with him. Thank you so much for that. I see also that you are fair. You are like letting people, even the Zionist people, to come and share their thoughts. I thank you also for that, because you seem realistic and you seem to be to put reason or to use your mind in comparing the evidence and trying to highlight the truth. Okay, so I really appreciate what you're doing again. And maybe Abdul Halim, for example, I understand his anger too. But I like yesterday I was very angry, also because Arab people, like I saw two Arab people who speak Arabic very, very well, who put Israeli flags on their profiles. So even we have as Arabs some corrupt people who can have high salaries, okay? So they have high salaries from Israel, for example, in order to stand by them. And I think it's not fair to close their eyes because they have high salaries, or to have bribes from Israel, for example. They are Arabs. They should be Arabs and Christians and Muslims. They should stand by their neighbors at least. You know what I mean? So when I as a Muslim and as an Arab person who can see another Arab person put Israeli flag on his profile, for example, and defending Israel, so he doesn't even look at the child, at the babies who are like lost their limbs, hands or legs or whatever. So maybe we should, even Bahrain will contribute in the army movements that will they are trying to go to Houthi, okay, to you know what is happening in Houthi area, and there are 5 countries now will try to make army movements. You know this idea, right? You know this
Mm-hmm.
movement.
Mm-hmm.
You heard about that, right? The 5 countries
Yeah.
that will fight Houthi, right? One of them is Arabic country. It's Bahrain.
Right.
So Bahrain is Arabic country, and it's fighting. It will fight Houthi. Houthi is trying by a way or another to help Palestine, and another Arab country is, it's making wrong decision. So we even have corruption in our governments.
Yeah.
So yes, the last thing I will say, it's not the citizens fault, it's all the government's fault, because I can see that someone like you, someone like Fiona, someone like all the other activists, they are doing the right thing. And again, I will not take a long time, but I really thank you, Chip.
Yeah, before you leave, I want to just have one quick tidbit to add. And again, I do not like to get into these kind of conversations any more than I have to, but I do want to give people a heads up because I think it's my job to be fair and honest with people. So this is someone, you mentioned the name Fiona. So this is Fiona Ryan, for those of you who don't know. So
Yeah.
I heard Fiona about a week ago on a live, and she sounded great. I literally enjoyed every word that she said. And so I had heard that she did a video saying she had been arrested. I don't know if people know what happened, but she got arrested by the UK police, came into her home and they arrested her at the time for what she said was basically for advocating for Palestine and basically criticizing Israel. And so that was the story as I understood it. And then of course more information started filtering out. I don't know if anybody else has heard the more information. I made a video about all this, but anyway, I do want to give one word of caution. I'm not going to say anything more about that. But the one thing I didn't get a chance to get into in my video was that people have alleged, not me, I don't know this for sure, but I've looked into it a little bit. It does seem valid, but I can't say for sure. But that Fiona traditionally will use her platform to create these different GoFundMe campaigns for paying her own bills and for fixing this car and I just caution people if they're interacting with Fiona to be careful about the donation process and do your due diligence and figure out if that makes sense for you or not. That's all I should share at this point. I don't want to get into it. Let me change the background. I don't want to give her a hard time.
Okay. But person like, for example, Quinn.
Yeah.
Quinn, I mean people like who are really trying to highlight the truth and to search or to dig for the truth, because it's long time ago. We have to search for long times ago, maybe before Christ even, because it's a very long conflict. So it's hard, it's not easy. But people maybe are afraid from the dark information that they don't know about. But anyways, the brave people who are trying to dig for the truth. Thank you, Chip, again one more time. I really appreciate your patience with all of that.
You're welcome. I appreciate the kind words.
And thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. Yeah, you try to be as fair as you can. You try not to listen. The last thing anybody wants, hopefully, is infighting, right? If you have a group of people that are all trying to work towards the same goal, then you want to work with everybody, right? But sometimes you got to be a little bit mindful of certain things and just try to be, aware, right? Let's put it that way. Background has you zip and people are crazy. I'm not sure what that means, but has my zip. Oh, I see what you're saying. Let me switch that out of there. Yeah, I live on the East Coast, so I'm sure if people want to find me, they're going to find me, right? But let me change that background to something else. Not to that. That's age group. Put it back on my cat. Yeah, anyway, so getting back to the thoughts, we have 2 more people in the guest queue. Let me bring up the next person here. We have Epi Revolution and then Plasma something or other. Hello?
What's up, Chip?
Hey.
This is Sentient Being.
I'm sorry, I couldn't catch what you said.
This is Sentient Being. I changed my name.
Oh, hey, how you doing? This is a new account for you?
No, it's the same account. I just realized I need to formalize my presentation and my statement, so I did it within my name, so I can stay focused.
Okay.
Keep the revolutions moving. I try to start a conversation about epi-revolution, something that's above all the singular conflicts that we can use as a vehicle to keep people focused on going forward. So that's what that's about. I've been watching you.
What did you want to discuss?
Well, that's what I was about to say. I've been watching
Okay.
you, and first of all, it's a delay. It's like a couple seconds, like 2 or 3. I don't know. But so there are no civilians, or a very low amount of civilians, or temporary civilian status in Israel. They have mandatory service. After a certain age, everybody must serve that doesn't have a proper excuse. And the people that get mount a proper excuse is not going to be the majority of people, or else the whole system will break down. So we keep talking about the people that Hamas encountered. From the time they breached that gate, they encountered soldiers. From the time they breached that gate, they encountered people who could be ready to fight in a
Right.
half a minute. Just get to their car, get to their wallet, get to their pocket. They got a gun, they got something. They train soldiers. They can walk around with anything that they can carry and damn near except for the tank. So
Yeah.
we see all these conversations happening. Oh, they killed these innocent people, innocent people. They didn't kill anybody from
Hey,
the
real quick,
original Holocaust.
we do this. For language wise, we're asking again, I could care less myself personally, but the algorithms have certain keywords that they use AI to track. And if you're using words like the H group in full or the KILL, we got to have some alternative to use, or I can't let somebody speak. So that if you can please be a little cautious around that. Otherwise, I got to drop it. Let's see. Maybe he's going to come back. I didn't want to try to stop him. I just don't want to get my live canceled.
I'm on. You
Okay.
got me?
Okay. Good deal.
All right. So I understand what you're saying too.
Good.
And excuse me. It's
No
just
worries.
that, like I said, I'm so used to seeing. Anyway, long story short, there is no civilians. Technically, you could say operationally, there is no civilians there.
Well,
Now,
younger
I
people
know
are
there's some.
people that are below a certain age are civilians for sure.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, people in the nursery, you know what I mean? People still in stomachs, you know what I'm saying? There's a lot
Well,
of
I mean,
people that we can talk.
the fighting age is typically 18 for the IDF, so I'd say anybody under the age of 18 or over the age of like 50 are probably considered
Yeah,
civilians.
there you go. And even the people that's over the age of 50 could have had seen some action or some training at some point.
Wherever you draw the line, wherever you draw the line.
And but the reality is that I'm trying to face is we take everything from a colonial point and we try to it's framed already for us before we can even look at it. The reality is everybody is one family. All of these separate lines and things we create, it's an illusion compared to like if you zoom out from the earth, we're all one family. And I think that we need to focus on not playing to the strengths of what we perceive as the people who doing wrong. So I would like to say rethink platforming people who can freely spew hate and evil shit. Excuse the language, but I mean shit. Come on, we can do that. Um, and then you on the other side, you got a person who's trying to defend humanity and not go there because I haven't seen one person, not anyone on this app, has been able to present that situation fair for anybody. Not even the
Mhm.
people watching it. It's not even fair for them watching it. The Zionist doesn't answer any questions, doesn't be honest about anything, evasive and deflective. And the people asking questions are begging for this one person to have humanity who can't change anything anyway. And it's just a demoralization. And then we got the host saying, I promise I will wipe your butt when you get through pooping on my people watching. I promise I will coddle you as long as you stay here with me. And it sends a message because we're boxing with people who are super hyper organized and they put money out to do what they're doing. So I would say everybody, when you're around, you go somewhere, you see these Zionists getting platformed, your spidey sense just start tingling. That's all I had to say.
When you say, I'm just trying to understand. I missed, so I think I missed the point. But you said not to platform those that are spewing the bad stuff. Are you referring to anybody in particular? Or are you referring to like maybe the average
No,
Zionist?
no, no. I'm just saying, like I go around, I come to sometimes it shows me that you're in a live, but you're not hosting, you're just visiting and watching. So I pop in and I see Chips there, so I sit there and listen. And there's somebody else controlling the room and moderating, and they got a Ziobot. He's
Yeah.
up there or she's up there, can say whatever they want. Suck my prick, anything. And they don't even get that same correction you gave me for saying KI double L.
Right.
They don't get none of that. They just get to sit there and stay. I look at the numbers. I go, okay, maybe they're doing this for a reason that is beneficial to the stream. No, it's not beneficial to the stream. It's just allowing them to you're platforming them, not you, but the person is platforming them, meaning giving their voice reach. And it doesn't
Right.
make sense. They're the ones with F-35s. They're the ones with all of these missiles. They're the ones
Yep.
with all of this American might. They don't need no platforming. We
Yep.
already know what they're going to say. We don't care if babies get ate up, or we don't care if whatever happens. So they don't need any platforming. So a rational, reasonable person who is down with humanity has to look at that and go, maybe I'm in the wrong space. Maybe they're trying to desensitize me to this. Maybe everybody playing nice with them is it. Listen, all I can say is this: it's like people juggling dynamite. If I see them juggling dynamite, I immediately assume that they got a very extreme comfortability with a dangerous set of scenarios. You got dynamite, you got multiple people, all kinds of things can happen. When you bring a Zionist into your room, you know for a fact they're not going to engage. And even if you change their mind and their heart, they cannot walk out and tell Bibi Netanyahu nothing. And the only thing they can do if they do say something is get ostracized themselves.
Right.
So I've been thinking there's no reason. There is no reason. If anything, stop platforming, not just for you. I'm talking about anybody listening to me. You do what you do. You grown ass man, older than me. But I'm saying, as a statement, if you platform them, we're weak. We're boxing with God. We're boxing with people who got payrolls they got colleges, they can shut you down at work.
I got you.
And so we get to talk to him, and now the Ziobot says, "Oh man, this guy on Chip's page, yeah, he's one we gotta watch." Then they get me shut down. I don't even have to have a problem with the Zionists just to appear near them. We need to keep them away from us while we doing our work. Who wants a person screwing up, dirtying up an area when you're trying to sweep it and clean it?
Okay. Yeah, I think
So
we
anyway,
understand your point. Yeah, thank you for letting us know
yes,
that. I
sir.
appreciate
Yes,
you
sir.
checking
Yes,
in.
sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
We'll
for
talk to you the
letting me.
next time. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's an interesting point of not platforming people. And the way I look at it is this: I'm not trying to convince anybody, because most people aren't going to be convinced. They're going to find their way to information that will convince them through their own willingness to, have an open mind. And that's generally how I try to approach stuff. And today I was in a live. I know exactly what he's talking about. I was in a live, and the host was allowing people who were pro-Israel to be absolutely inappropriately vile with people in the room, and you call them names and denigrate them and talk about owning them and I'll kick your ass and all that. That's no way to handle yourself in a communication over serious issues. I don't think. Doesn't really do any good. So anyway, just different styles. I think we have. Well, actually, the person who was next line left. Plasmaka, are you done? You want to come up? I mean, you drop back down, but maybe you don't want to talk. So if you want to come back up, please do. Saul was next, and then we have Matrix and Cactus icon.
Hi there.
Hello.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good, thank you.
That's good. I am a Zionist, so if you want to ask me questions, please go ahead.
Well, I'm not really interested in asking somebody questions per se. I mean, I'm somebody who takes a different viewpoint. I've talked about it at length in terms of my position of my objective study, 34 years of analyzing the conflict, all the different scholars' work that I've read about it. And I don't necessarily come down on the side of quote unquote the Palestinians per se. I don't know anybody who's Palestinian. I don't know anyone who lives in Israel or who outside of Israel is sort of a really strong Zionist supporter. I take the side I take, or I look at it the way I look at it because of the dynamics between the parties. So
Okay.
I'll give you an example. When other people are oppressed elsewhere, I tend to look at the oppression and be against the oppression. So I look at the power. If the roles were reversed, I mean, literally one for one reversed, where an Arab state had been carved out of this territory and there were Jewish communities that had been displaced, and what had happened subsequent to that with Jewish resistance, but the mostly Arab suppression, I would be critical of the Arab government and what they're doing, especially if they were doing what the Israeli government doing now, as far as the disproportionate response and all of the, let's say, questionable use of air power.
I agree with you. It's been overkill and it needs to stop.
Okay, that's good. Did you have any points you want to make in general about how you feel about things? I mean,
Yeah, I
where's your
just want to say a
position?
quick few things. My cousin was unalived at the music festival. My father
Okay.
was unalived. My father, my uncle, and my cousin were all unalived during the Second Intifada. So to say that I would be very anti-Palestinian is very true. Except,
By the way, I'm very sorry you suffered those losses. I feel terrible for you about that.
thank you, I appreciate it. Except I'm not anti-Palestinian. I'm anti H group
Age group, sure.
because
Understandably so. They directly affected your life in a very bad way.
and to say that what I've suffered isn't what's going on. It doesn't mean what's going on is correct. I agree with that. It's incorrect, 100%.
Right.
If there was a way that we could go about this rather than unaliving each side, there should be a political way, except for the fact that each side's people in charge are both so right wing that they will never ever be able to accept each other. So
Yeah.
there needs to be a way that each side can come to the table and discuss the way that we can be able to have a state where nobody's been unalived for no stupid reason.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think, people have made different arguments around this from both sides of the issue. I think that there's been a concerted effort among some throughout the different administrations in Israel to try to scuttle things. There have been offers made, but the offers weren't really serious offers. They've all involved continued Israeli control of the territories and of the people. So those were difficult for people to accept because, yeah, the land may have been more attractive than prior offers, but the circumstances and sort of the variables of constraint by the Israelis over the Palestinians, those elements weren't going to go away. So it's tough to take those deals. In fact, a lot of people
No,
who
I'm not saying it has to be a one state solution. I'm saying any solution needs to happen.
Yeah, I think the challenge with everything if you just took a quick look at it today, there's so many settlements that have so carved up the West Bank that I don't believe that there's a way to have a quote two-state solution based on the 1967 borders. There's just so much infrastructure and so much property and so much development that it's just it's kind of gone too far, if you will. It's like cancer that has grown too far, and you can't you can't change it. But a one-state solution, those in power in Israel do not want to have the potential for an Arab majority. That's untenable to them. I mean, just in Jerusalem alone, in West Jerusalem, they will not allow the Palestinian population to exceed 30% of the total population under any circumstances. That's an indicator of how they feel about a single state. So that's untenable. So the only
Yeah,
thing
but
that
it's
I
also
think is happening is
untenable with the H group saying they want to unalive every single Jew in the world. How's that tenable?
well, let me respond to that and say that while there certainly are people in every radical group that has racist tendencies, and they may want to act on those racist tendencies, and I don't know the exact makeup of the age group with regard to what I just said, but I do know that they changed their charter, which many don't know, in
Doesn't matter if
2017.
they change the charter, they're still saying it. If you go onto my TikTok
I'm aware. I'm aware. I'm aware.
channel,
I'm aware.
my
I'm
first
aware of it.
video
I'm
is
aware.
very reasonable. I've done fact checking on every single statement that I've posted, and not a single H group leader wants peace with Israel. They want every single Israeli or Jewish person to die. So to say that that you can agree with that, it doesn't matter what the charter says. It's still
Well,
what they think.
I would challenge that assertion. Like I said, I wouldn't doubt that there are extremists among every group that has hardliners. But remember, the West Bank is not run by or infiltrated with H group. So a lot of
I didn't say
Palestinians.
West Bank, I said Gaza.
Well, my point is, though, again, I think if you look at the underlying reason for any resistance group, forget about the H group for a second. You know, if you go back to the founding of, I don't know what part of the world you're from. I'm from the United States, but if you go back to the founding of my
Canada.
country, from Canada, okay. If you go to the founding of my country, there were a small group of very highly motivated Americans who hated the British occupation, who would just assume unalived British soldiers as well as British family members of the soldiers who had taken their homes when they occupied the colonies. So they were considered to be, according to the British, T-words, because they did awful things, committed atrocities outside of, typical battle, which they looked at as being unconventional and unacceptable. I'd argue that's very similar to the resistance movement that we see in the H group. There's members among them that are the more hard lines that are willing to do anything to somebody else who they don't like, and especially may have a hatred for people who are Jewish. I don't know exactly. I don't know what's in all their minds, but I do know as a group and as a leadership, they made a big shift in 2017 with respect to what they said that's not congruent with what you just said. They've even said in their charter, in actual written language, their problem is not with the Jewish religion. Their problem is with the Zionist movement, a settler colonial political ideology that's not necessarily aligned with Jewish ethnicity or religion, because of the issues it imposed on the region when it was constructed. But they've acknowledged the reality that it's unlikely that the state is going to go away at this point. They're not going to recognize its validity, but they're willing to work a two-state solution based on the 67 borders. That's what their charter says. Read paragraphs 16 through 20. I can print it out for you. But I don't think that's going to happen, because I don't think the political dynamics will allow it to happen, given what I said about the settlements and the nature of the different administrations within Israel. So I don't see there being any solution to it peacefully, although that would be the way to stop what we're seeing, because resistance is born from oppression, not in a vacuum, out of hatred. I don't know if he's still there or not. Maybe we lost him. Anyway, I really appreciate somebody bringing up points of view. I mean, listen, if my family was attacked by anybody and I lost family members who I loved, I don't know if I could get past my anger about that on any level, no matter what somebody said, no matter what charter they may have changed, no matter what they think they can do. Those are the bad guys. They hurt my family, right? So how do you get past that? I don't think you can. But I think it works both ways, because if you're somebody who's living under a building that's being bombed and 12 stories fall on you and they unalive 3/4 of your family, that's the same feeling, right? Ralph, thank you. If you have a good offer, I'll be glad to talk to you about it. Ralph says, get a job. Okay, this is work in a way. I don't get paid well for it, but it is work. But thank you for the suggestion, Ralph. I appreciate the offer. So that feels the same way, right? So the same hurt that Saul was feeling is the same hurt that's been felt by Palestinians since the origination of Israel. A lot of them were displaced off their land. A lot of their grandparents were harmed or unalived. That hurt feels the same way. So I'm not for hurt to either person. I'm not for civilians, whether they're ones who serve temporarily or on like a National Guard person, or whether they're really a non-combatant young person or older person. I'm not for any of those people being harmed or hurt. I'm not for armed conflict, period, right? Even if they're combatants. And again, but it has to work both ways. And if the government response is such that it's going to be incredibly disproportionate and hard to justify based on the stated goals of eliminating those who perpetrated the events on the 7th, I don't know how you can make heads and tails of that. People see it for what it is. So if you think that the idea of basically bombing somebody into submission is going to solve your problem, it's not going to solve the problem. In fact, for each person that does happen to be caught up in that, whether they be regular civilians or members of the group you're going after or both, that just further enrages them, and that creates more resistance. And what's at the root of all this, unfortunately, and yes, people have made the argument to me that over time, every culture has some version of this that happens. Like in my country, the reason I'm sitting where I am is because my forefathers, about 7 generations ago, they unalived tens of thousands and millions of Native Americans. So am I a hypocrite for being here? And is the same thing that's happening right now in this very small moment the same result of what happened here? Yes, absolutely. The only difference is that it's not happening now. Like, I can't go back 210 years and stop it. I can't talk about it. It's ancient history, if you will. What we're seeing now is not ancient history. It's day by day. So we have to have some way of trying to influence the now, because that's all we ever have is the now, right? So that's why people are so outraged about it. It's not necessarily that it's not congruent with what has happened historically. It's just that what has happened historically is not right. Therefore, this isn't right. Just because it happened, I mean, you can make the same argument on anything. Well, this person unalived somebody, so I have the right to do it because they did it. No, you don't. It's still wrong. So anyway, I hope that's helpful to give some comparison. I think we had Cactus next, then we have Ahmed and Swap Face.
Hello.
Hi.
I thought you made a really good point just there. As far as contextualizing that human loss, and it is very tragic too. I personally know someone through just a friend of a friend who was in the IDF, who was unalived on October 7th, and of course. Oh, that's funny. How do they know who I am? Well, anyway.
You have fans. That's nice to know.
No, I bought 1,000 so I could come on. So I could come on live.
How much does that cost to buy followers?
It's very cheap. Yeah, I just because there's the follower limit. But I was gonna say he was in the IDF, but he was conscripted and he was really disillusioned with the occupation. Oh yeah, Liam O'Mara. Do you know Liam O'Mara?
I don't know him personally, but I'm a big fan of his, and I like listening to him. He's a very, very smart man.
Yeah, very, very knowledgeable. Yeah. But this guy was really disillusioned and was planning on actually leaving Israel in 3 weeks before he was attacked. Yeah. So it's really sad to see just, someone like him who was not blinded to the injustices, who was just caught in the violence, and it's very terrible. But I would say, in some way, because people do bring that up, and I've, argued kind of from both sides of this sometimes, because some people are like, well, groups like the H group are, it's fine, if they, whatever, they're settlers, and it's like, well, yeah, if you're living in Canada or the US or Australia, or, you're a total hypocrite if you say that at the end of the day. Because, I would also point out that, the oppression of Native Americans in the US is still ongoing. It's not, of course, as violent as it was, but there's a huge amount of concerning indicators just about how Native Americans are treated and still marginalized today. But many very knowledgeable Native Americans would be the first to say that that's not the answer, and that's not, it's about justice and not retribution. But the other thing too, to get in more to the meat of what I wanted to talk about, was with that person who was there before me. It's really important to distinguish between Israel as a nation state and the H group as a militia, and also it's not just the H group. There's a lot of other, of course, there's the Palestinian Islamic Jihad and the PFLP, and Marxist, Leninist, Maoist, organizations that have different ideological foundations that kind of they all kind of work together, but they have different aims, and they're not fundamentally organized or very powerful when it comes to if you compare them to a country like Israel. And ultimately Israel is the party that really has the potential to end the violence. But at the same time, I'm very pessimistic on this, unfortunately, because as someone who's been presumably studying this for a long time, there's really no precedent that would involve some sort of, like you pointed out, the two-state solution doesn't work because of the borders for a lot of reasons. And the demographic concern is a huge thing. And the only real solution is for it all to be one secular country. But it just doesn't seem, it's very difficult to imagine that happening unless there is really strong external pressure. And even then, there's so much trauma built up between both of these groups to really get people to undergo that generations long process of coming to terms with each other and processing that trauma would be a huge task. I mean, Rwanda is the only really encouraging example you could look at, maybe. Obviously what happened there was more extreme, but they were still able to, in a span of a decade, pretty much fully reconcile. But they didn't really have a lot of cultural differences, really. It was a very artificial distinction of, people. Whereas
Right.
here, it's linguistic, it's cultural, it's religious. It's really hard to imagine. Um,
Yeah, the Israelis would need to dismantle and withdraw from every millimeter of the settlements.
yeah.
That's the only way to make that work, and I don't think they're willing to do even a little bit of that.
And it would require dismantling the institutions of the state of Israel the way we understand it, because it isn't just about being a Jewish state. It is also built around a couple different things. One is I'd say the institutions are very paranoid and very militant, like very bellicose. I mean, the military has a huge amount of influence on the society and the government. And it's like systemic discrimination in the US. Like the systems and the institutions are built around marginalization and protection of the settlements and all these different things. It would require that you basically strip down the government and build it into something else, which can't really see happening either. The only thing that would be arguably worse than what's currently unfolding is if a civil war within Israel broke out, which what are your thoughts on that as someone who's been intimately familiar with Israel for a while? Because it's obviously a deeply divided society, in and of itself.
Yeah, it's certainly possible. I mean, right now, if you look at what just happened before, 8 or 9 weeks ago, it was bubbling over big time. Some of the people that have been protesting have simmered down a bit because of the nationalism, but there's still a lot of people that are absolutely positively against Netanyahu at every single level. It's almost like the anti-Trump crowd in America. I mean, they really, really don't like the guy, and they want to see his government out. But because of what's going on, they're sort of hanging on by a thread. And I think Netanyahu, if he does get out of power, he's going to jail. So that's another reason for him not to want to stop what's happening. So, it's a very unpleasant place to be right now in terms of the domestic politics.
Yeah, it's funny because, right after October 7th happened, like, I'm sure your reaction was one of, like, oh God, what is Israel going to do now?
Yes.
If you're aware of the dynamics, that have, been the precedent, but people that weren't as intimately familiar with it were like, oh no, it's so, and, a lot of people are so surprised, but it's been going on for years. It just, the numbers are bigger. But the
Usually
proportion,
about 10 or 12 to 1. In this case, it's been a lot more.
10 or 12 to 1.
Yeah, for each fatality that Israel sustains, they usually inflict 10 to 12 fatalities at least in the response.
Yeah, I guess they passed it a couple weeks ago. Yeah.
Quite a bit.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's really concerning too, just the reports of, indiscriminate and the 3 hostages who were unalived as well. It was very concerning. Just which you wonder, like, well, what are they doing to regular people? But I also think there's so much potential risk because there's also like different groups within Israel, like the settlers, and there's a lot of settlers. It was like 700,000, so they all kind of have their own perspective and politics and beliefs, and then people in like the heartland in Tel Aviv, they're very different. And they all kind of have competing, views and agenda. And it's the judicial reform thing it's at least somewhat populist, but if there's more infighting between like settler groups and, mainland, the heartland, and I don't know, because then it could escalate to where these militias are just carrying out indiscriminate attacks and there's no one to really hold them accountable if there's this civil conflict.
That's what's happening right now.
Yeah, I get, but if there's a total breakdown, like total, like moving towards civil war.
Well, you've brought up some really good points. We do have those that are waiting, so I want to give them a chance. But thank you very much. And you have some fans, and I'm a fan too. I like how you talked. Thank you very much for doing it.
You too, man. Yeah, I'll give you a hug.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Thanks for being here. I think Matthew's here. Let me see if I can undo his microphone. Then we have Swap Face next. We have about 12 minutes left, maybe 10 minutes. So try to be short so others can get in before we close up.
Hey. Hey, Chip.
Hi.
Hey, I've just been listening, and the question that I wanted to ask was how much of the population in Israel is against Netanyahu's cabinet and government?
Oh,
Is there
a
a
good
figure?
number. Let me do the exact number because I know the approval rating went up when the war started, which is typical. But let me see. Let me see what the thing is now. Percentage of Netanyahu Yahoo approval. Yeah, it says as the war rages, his approval plummets. Let me see the exact number here. Wow. Results show that under 4% trust him. I didn't know it was
Oh
that
my
low.
gosh.
That's unbelievable. A lot of it has to do with the fact that the hostages, people are just shocked that they're not really going out of their way to make a bigger effort to get them back alive. And which the news had just got reported that they unalived 3 hostages that were no shirt, so they knew they weren't armed. They were waving a white flag, and the IDF still shot them. One was injured and was waving the flag injured, and they moved up and shot him too. It's awful. They don't seem to have the military doctrine of this Hannibal doctrine. Seems there's a big indifference to the hostage situation, which people are mad about.
Yeah, this is all just honestly just a big mess all around. I really knew nothing about this before everything happened, and I feel bad about it. But I've been trying to deconstruct a lot of stuff for a while. Obviously, you see my name, Matthew 7:14. I am a believer, and yeah, a lot of this stuff is just based on this. Just it doesn't make sense. It's all fascism. It's all these things that have been going on for so long. I want this stuff to end. This is like thousands and thousands of years of this type of brutality and this type of authoritarianism and just all this destruction for greed and power. But it's been this way for so long. It's really hard to I hope it changes. I want it to change. I'm a part of that if it's possible, being a voice.
Yeah, I think what really needs
especially
to
on my
change.
side.
What really needs
Sorry.
to change domestically. Well, that's okay. What really needs to change domestically, it's much bigger than just this one issue, as you may be aware. The American
Oh, yeah.
political system is absolutely bought and paid for by corporations. It's controlled by the national security state, and it's influenced by groups like Israel. And that power dynamic is right now in charge of everything, and the U.S. citizens are just an afterthought.
Oh, I completely agree. I could see that. This has been a big well-oiled machine for a long time. And, I was on the other side for a long time. Like I was actually, pretty conservative. I don't want to say far right, but I probably fell into that. And I have been deconstructing for probably close to a year now. And I am just baffled. Like I've been on both sides. I'm learning as much as I can. And everybody's saying you can't talk to people on the other side, people that are indoctrinated this way. It's really, really hard. And
Can I make a couple of humble suggestions? Would that be okay?
Sure.
Since you're sort of on this journey of sort of deconstructing and rediscovering certain things. So there's a really good documentary called Life in Occupied Palestine, which has opened a lot of people's eyes up. It's free to watch on YouTube, Life in Occupied Palestine. And then the other thing is just very self-serving. Please go back through my video library here, both the ones I've reposted, but especially the ones that I've made over the last 2.5 months. I cover every single issue you're talking about in depth, and you'll get a good understanding of what I've learned over the years if you want to see a summation of the things that I've covered. And I think it'll help you really round out your knowledge journey that you're on right now. Of course, I'm not the be-all, end-all. But the other thing you can do on my Twitter page, which is just my name, Chip Barnes, I have a list of all the people that I've followed for all the years that I've been doing this, which they're much more knowledgeable than I am. That's how I've learned all the stuff I've learned, for the most part. So the very first message at the top of my Twitter page has a list of like 35 or 40 people who I really admire, their objective and stuff. So those are some resources for you. I do have to go to the next person. We're going to close up in about 6 minutes. So thank you so much for coming on. I
Okay,
appreciate it.
same handle on Twitter.
It's just Chip Barnes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you. Thank you so much. Yeah, just let everybody know real quick. Every creator like me, eventually, because you have so many different things going on, you have what's called a link tree. It's in your bio. So I have that. If you go to my bio and you look under my name, it's just a little thing. It's a clickable link called Linktree Chip Barnes. That takes you to everything I got, right on down the line, Twitter, Instagram, blah, blah, blah. You'll see it. Makes sense. And if you want to help out, I have a lot of people that are supporting my effort. They like my approach. If that's you, by all means, there's some ways to do that. So I appreciate that. Okay, really quickly here. We We had Swap Face and then Ahmed. I'm not gonna be able to get you Ahmed's, and I might be able to get to Ahmed. We finish up at 10 o'clock. So try to be like a minute or so if you can. I'll try to get the next person in.
Hello, Chip. How are you?
Good.
Actually, I'm originally Palestinian. And I've been studying in the States, and I've been living there for some while. So I have many friends that they are Americans, okay, with different nationalities. I've been in Dubai. I've been around the world. I've been in China and Hong Kong and every place. So I've
Okay.
been exposed to many cultures actually. My origins are from Palestine. My father was also, he was born in, let's say, the 48 areas, the green areas of Israel.
Okay.
That was the Ben Gurion or Tel Aviv. So if I want to talk, I will talk out of experience. I want you to understand the situation that Muslims or Palestinians, we used to live side by side with Jews. We never had any disputes with them. In fact, once they had their problems inside Europe and the Nazis were against them, we took them into Palestine. They were refugees. They were our guests. We gave them land, them everything to settle by us. But unfortunately, you know that power of occupiers, like that time it was Britain. They gave the land of the original Palestinians to these guys. I don't want to go into the history of these things, but I want to show you something. This conflict, it has been about real estate conflict, plus it is an economical conflict. It's so
Okay.
obvious. Why should it arise now? Why should it be, brought up now? Suddenly, once they talk about a route from India to Europe through Israel and Haifa, once they discover a trillion of what do you call it? The gas, inside in front of Gaza Marina, in Eshkol, and same thing. They have the in front of Ashdod also. It's all been over there. Now they want to make. It's always been there. It's always been about economics. So I hear some people over here that are talking about. Why are people dying? Who is controlling Americans? Who's controlling the world? Okay, it's very obvious who's controlling money. Who has the money? Look who's moving around the money. Okay, it's all about. Look at America's wars. Every war America went into. Okay, it was about petrol. It was about money. What are Americans doing in Syria right now? Taking the petrol of the Syrians. What they were doing in Iraq, it is about also the petrol. What they were doing in Afghanistan, it's about the uranium. In any war you will talk about, or you will see. Now, what they want to do in the Red Sea, they want to control the Red Sea again. But the good thing that I'm seeing at this time, a few years ago, we were hearing about Muslim fighting among each other, like Sunnit and Shiite. I don't know what these secular movements, the Al-Qaeda, ISIS. Man, to tell you the truth, these Al-Qaeda and ISIS, they never had the people to support them, even inside the population, the Arabic population or the Muslim population. We never believed in their ideas, in their how they think. In their religion, even. Let me call it a different religion from us. But once you talk about the H group is different. We consider it as a part of the population. It's a part of the resistance. Okay, though it is under it's under the umbrella of Islam, but I remember something actually, because I have only 6 minutes. I don't want to go and prolonging
Well, it's
the
not even
talk.
6 minutes. We do have two more people waiting. I was hoping you were going to make a point a little sooner, but if you
Yeah.
can please round out.
What I like it about this time, we have a wake-up call. I see, for the first time in my life, I see people like Chip, like Matthew, like other. They are supporting the thing we have right here. They have heard about us. They understand now it's not only Gaza that's occupied. Something wrong with the governments they are having over there. But this is the first time I feel we are on the right path, that we can do something in the future because now you see the symptoms. You understand that there is a sickness in the society or in the government, let's say, not society, of course. Okay, so after analyzing this sickness, at least you can do what you call it therapy for it. You can provide the therapy for it. Okay, maybe now you don't know. You say that they're so strong, they are so powerful, they are so whatever. Okay, but later on, I think we find a way. Okay, to solve these issues little by little. But the first step is to know that we have a problem.
Yeah,
That's
awareness.
it.
Okay, thank you very much for coming. I appreciate it very much. Have a very nice evening. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, we have 2 more people in here. I think I had, I don't know if I think Ahmed was next because I think was it Islam Day or Ahmed? I can't remember, guys. Let me flip a coin. We're getting close to the end here, though, so just please be like 1 or 2 minutes. And if you want to ask a question, that's fine, but I can't have somebody go for 5 or 7 minutes again. Okay, not coming through. All right, let's try. Ahmed Kamai, and this is gonna be the last person for tonight.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
All right, a few points. I'll try to be as fast as possible. Now, a lot of people talk about the two-state solution. Now, if I'm a Zionist, I would never allow the two-state solution because now me as a pro-Palestinian, I would want, if I'm going to have my own country, I would have my own borders, and I would want to have military. I would want to have tanks. I would want to have military forces to defend myself because I have the right to defend myself. Now, Zionists would not allow this, and I understand, because the moment a Palestinian state is given all this, the very first thing they'll do is try to free the other lands, the other Palestinian lands. So, two-state solution is not doable at all. This is my first point. The second point, now it was suggested before to the Zionists to be given a land in Africa, and there was another land, I don't remember where. And
It was
then
Uganda and Argentina.
Exactly, thank you. So it was suggested before, and then all of a sudden they decided to be Palestine. As the other person said, we lived side by side with Jews. We had no problems with Jews at all. So it's either Israel or Palestine, because they can't live side by side, because Palestinians do not believe, Arabs, and all Arabs do not believe in the existence of a state of Israel. But we also believe that Jews or any religion should live in peace. So there is just no solution to that, because you can't occupy the land and then look for solutions. Now we all know that Zionists have no friends in this area at all. Even if they think that they have peace with few Arab states, they know deep inside that the people of those Arab states don't believe in this peace. Yeah. So there's just no solution to it. Just think about it. Think about the almost 20,000 Palestinians died, and their families believe that this is a great cause, and we all believe that I don't know. I think I made a point, and thank you very much. Thank you very much for letting us speak. And I would like to thank everyone in US, in Europe, in the whole world for speaking for us. We in our states cannot speak as freely as you do. The last thing I want to say is that we do not hate Jews. We are against Zionists,
I
not
agree.
Jews.
Right. 100%.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate it. Good points. Yeah, that's an important point to point out. I mean, a lot of people, I was watching a live today, and the people that were on the live said unequivocally, just like the US Congress has said to the public, that if you are against Zionism, you hate Jewish people, period, end of story, no more conversation. That's their point of view. That's not true. I've made this distinction so many times, and I don't care what the Congress says or what people on those panels say or what hardcore Zionists say. That's BS. That's a way of getting out of accountability for what the Zionist movement has done, to conflate the two and then deflect any criticism of the behavior of the Zionist movement and what it has done to harm others, to say you can't criticize that because then it means you hate a certain group and that makes you a bad person. And that's bullshit, right? That's another tactic used to try to create a no-win situation for those who want to point out what is really worthy of criticism and condemnation. Now, I will say this, and I say this over and over. It is a good thing that people who are Jewish, their grandparents and great-grandparents have been historically marginalized, pogroms, whatever it may have been, for whatever reason it was. I think anybody with a decent heart doesn't want anybody to be subjected to mistreatment or harm just for who they are, right? If you do something wrong, okay, fair enough, you can get either punished or criticized, but just for being who you are, your skin color, your ethnicity, that's not cool. So to the extent that it helped people have a safe place to be, that's a good thing. And if the movement was geared towards just that, that makes sense, right? That's a good, positive thing for people who are Jewish. But that's not what it was. This is a settler colonial mindset that lobbied the British, who happened to have control after World War I, to give something to a group of people who lobbied for it, along with some money that came in from a certain family, that allowed them to take land from people that had been living on it for multiple generations in peace with their neighbors. That's the story. And people don't want to hear that's the story, but that's what happened. That's what biophysical reality, that's what happened. Now, you can paint it however you want. You can say that God gave you the land 3,000 years ago. You can say that it's ours, we're the divine people, whatever you want to do. But in the end, that happened, right? That happened. So everyone has their story around it, but being vitriolic towards those that are upset about that is unfair, because if it happened to your grandparents or to you, you'd be unhappy, right? So it's all, again, it's just like these biblical principles or principles from the Quran or from the Torah. It's all the same stuff. It's about, think from the other person's point of view. It's better to give than receive. First listen, understand before being understood. It's all these golden rule type principles, right? Those who break the golden rule cause problems. The Zionist movement, which is mostly a political ideology, it was mostly born by somebody who was a stated atheist, Theodor Herzl. And then after he died in 1904, Chaim Weizmann carried the torch forward, along with guys like David Ben-Gurion later in the first or second decade of the 20th century. They did bad things to try to achieve their goals that hurt people. And not that it's unique to the history of the Zionist movement, it's happened forever, but it doesn't make it right. And so it's fair for people who were inflicted with that damage to be upset about it. Now, if that's all that ever happened, okay, maybe people could get over it by now, right? But it didn't stop. Let's be fair. The Israeli government and military, and yes, were there efforts by those to try to stop what had happened? Yeah, there are different conflicts that took place in different times. And yes, the Israeli military at that time was much stronger than it is today and was able to repel the attacks against it. Okay, good for them. They were able to maintain what they had gotten through these ill-gotten gains by lobbying and taking stuff from others. But they did more than that. In 1967, they took it a step further, claiming that they were under threat. I made a video about this today. And they moved in and they unalived and they destroyed the Egyptian Air Force, the Syrian Air Force, and they moved their forces over. They were able to push back the Jordanians, and they went up to the Jordan River, and they now occupy the territory. They think it's theirs because they, quote, won an offensive war, which doesn't fly after World War II. Everybody agreed to that. Like, we're not going to do that anymore. We're not going to take territory. So international law is only as good as its enforceability, but that's what happened. So to claim that somehow it's yours to do with what you want, there's still people living there. These are the people that got initially pushed off. So it's bad enough they had to find a new place to set up shop. And then you're further pushing them off their land because you can, because you have the guns and you have the bullets and you have the United States backing you up. And it's a bullshit deal for the people who you're doing it to, right? Now, if you happen to be in Gaza, it's even worse because you had settlements in your territory until 2005. And you were getting constantly effed with because of the skirmishes and the military power. They finally withdrew because it was just too much of a damn headache, understandably so. But then they blockaded the place in and controlled every aspect of their lives. You can't go in, you can't go out, you can't go on vacation, you can't sail, you can't, none of that, right? And everything that goes in and out is controlled by, it's basically an occupying force via blockade is what it's called. It's called a siege or a blockade. Those are military impositions of force. And according to military doctrine, if you occupy a people or you blockade them in, they have the right to resist. Many don't. The Cubans haven't resisted the U.S. blockade. They're not able to. They don't have the stuff in there to be able to do the resistance because the blockade kept them from doing it. But things have filtered into the territory through whatever means, underground tunnels or smuggling, that have allowed a militant group who has taken up arms to try to liberate their people from this oppressive situation, like anybody who would, if they have any pride in themselves, they're going to fight back, right? You can choose not to. You can say that the American Indians here, American Native Americans, don't fight back because they've accepted the fact that this is historic. No, that's a choice, right? Other people don't choose to be held down. Their connection to their land and their thoughts about who they are as a people and that identity they have with them is so strong and so interconnected and so interwoven that they can't get past wanting to fight for what is theirs. That's just their mindset. You can't kill a mindset. You can unalive a generation of people who maintain that mindset, but unless you exterminate the entire people, that mindset's going to persist. And we've seen that play out over the decades. Palestinians have taken tremendous loss. And yes, they fought back in cases which have caused tremendous harm to people in Israel through various unconventional things like, explosions or what we saw on the 7th that have harmed civilians, which I'm against. But when you're occupied and you don't have the resources to fight a fair fight, you have to try things that can do anything to try to change the imbalance that you're under, right? So, like I said, if the tables were turned, and it was Jewish people who were affected the same way, and there was an Arab state, I would have the same, critical observation of things and point out the same power dynamics. I'm not pro-Palestine. People ask me today, are you a pro-Pally? I said, well, that's the side of the issue that I fall on, but I'm not necessarily pro-Palestinian. I don't have any relatives. I don't have any relationships with either side. But I see the power dynamics. You have oppressor and oppressed. You have harm, person being harmed, right? Weak, strong, not weak-minded, but in terms of the armaments and the ability to defend oneself and to have a fair fight. Not well-armed versus massively well-armed. I don't think that's fair. I think that's an injustice in so many ways. And that's why I stand behind it. Not that the world's perfect, and not that injustice doesn't happen everywhere. But here it's especially disgusting in my point of view because of what my country does to perpetuate it and the lack of international intervention. I think it's really sad. But I understand why. So it bothers me that there's propaganda to try to justify it. Like the caller said earlier today, he was angry at people like us in America that we don't do more. And I can understand that. But most people are victims of a fake story. They don't get the full story. They either get lied to by omission, which means in our country, we only get a very small version of the true story, as we have for decades, because there was a very small number of outlets for information to flow. So it was easier to control it. Now we're seeing a huge fragmentation in that model. And that's why there's so much international outrage. So if there's one good thing that can be drawn from such a horrific tragedy, it's that awareness, as the caller called in, the cactus guy called in and said, more people see it now. And I did a video when this first kicked off about a weekend, and I'll stand by it. It says, do you believe the media or do you believe your own two eyes? And I think for the longest time, people believe the media. And now they're believing their own two eyes because it's irrefutable proof. You see a video of a building with a bunch of people squashed underneath the rubble, people coming out looking horrible. I won't give you the details. You all seen the stuff I've seen. And you see it over and over and over. And it elicits a visceral emotional response. We're human. We wouldn't want it to happen to our little kids, our family, our women, our children. And people get pissed, right? And then they see there's nothing they can do about it because when they try to protest, it doesn't change the actions. They'll stop buying Starbucks. It doesn't change the actions. They go, maybe they call their senator or their congressman. They get blown off, right? That's incredibly frustrating. And then you have to watch more of it day after day. And then you add in the humanitarian aspect of it. Just that's bad enough, right? And imagine if you're somebody living there for a second. Just try to put yourself there. It's hard to do, right? Because we're in our safe little places. We're talking on a damn phone, having a little conversation. But, people are there. Just the grief alone from losing, let's say, a half dozen family members. Think how bad that would feel. Just the grief of a little kid or an adult. That's a hard thing to get over. Even when your parent dies, it's hard to get over, right? Or your cat or dog. But add to that the discomfort of being displaced from your home, being in the cold, having no food, no clean water, no place for sanitation, being constantly under the fear of additional bombardment. Just imagine that for a second, how bad that must be. So I try to be empathetic and think from someone else's point of view, and I would be absolutely I don't know what I would do. And it's amazing to me that in the face of all that hardship and all that adversity, they still stay strong. And they still stay optimistic because the cause is greater than the harm or any one person. People are giving to a greater thing than themselves. And that's an amazing quality to have. And I don't believe that most of the conscripted soldiers in the Israeli military have any of that. They're not willing to risk their life for something that they see as an unnecessary overreach of a very far-right government. So I don't know if people agree with that, but that's kind of how I see it. So anyway, I don't like it. I would encourage those of you who kind of enjoy my way of presenting information, please check my videos because I usually drop 1 or 2 a day, or maybe I'll take a couple days off here and there like I did recently, but I'm always on the lives. So in addition to checking out my library of videos, which cover almost everything that I've discussed regularly, you can also check me out live. I'm live here on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. That's Eastern Time, New York City. And then on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, I go live from noon until about 2 p.m. This Saturday, out of the blue, I just kept going, and we had an 8-hour and 15-minute live with no interruption, which is pretty crazy. But I've recorded it, and I'm going through the process of recording all of these sessions, and they're going up onto my YouTube and my Rumble pages, whether you can put longer form content. So for those of you who want to check out either a recording of this one or others, I've had some really interesting guests and some really cool coverage. That guy Quinn from Cairo, Egypt was on Saturday. So the way you can find my content, I have a link tree in my bio, which is just a shortcut to my list of social media and other links. So if you go to my main page where my videos are, it's underneath my name and my bio. It says Linktree Chip Barnes. Click it. Follow my backup account here. I've got some content on my backup on TikTok. I have another one called Truth Seeker 670. And on that backup account, I've put like a half dozen videos that I don't have here, just to try to give people a reason to go check it out. I got a couple with my dog Ruby, who's right. Let me see if I can take off the background here. Here we go. There we go. So there's Ruby right there. Ruby's cute as can be. And I have lots of videos with Ruby and I running around this dog park that's fun as hell on my backup account. So if you want to check out Ruby, do that. And then on my Twitter, I have a really cool link with all the people that I follow. I mentioned that a few minutes back. And then if you want to help out, I've been doing this full time with no pay. I mean, it's funny. I do a live for 3 hours and it says, congratulations, you've earned 7 cents. I mean, I'm not kidding you. I can show you the screenshots. It's funny as hell. So I'm not looking to do a telethon, but if you're somebody who wants to help and you have the means to do so, I'm kind of riding the end of my savings right now as a business guy. You can do that. There's like Cash App, PayPal, Patreon, which is like a membership thing. And then I think I have, what's the other one I have? It's Zelle from a band. You'll see them. They're on there. And then in addition, there's some cool groups you can be a part of. One of the videos I did today was the fact that we're hitting this block when it comes to voting. Like we're not able to get through to these elected officials. So we have to figure out a plan B, right? It's either plan B or they're going to keep running plan A down our throats. So there's some information of groups you can join to check that part out. Like what does plan B mean? What might that involve? And how do we make a difference? There's that. So there's a lot of cool stuff going on. I mean, like I said, the awareness has been the only good thing to come out of this, as horrible as it is. So anyway, I want to thank Em and anybody else who moderated tonight. Thank you for your help. I really appreciate it. I want to shout out to somebody who I've been in contact with outside of here named Shelia. She's a wonderful woman. She's been very kind to me, and she's been a regular follower for some time. And I just really like, it's amazing how many good people there are in the world. We see a lot of bad things happening, but you got to remember, most people at our core were good people, right? And even people that are in Israel who are supportive of what we're seeing, they have a good side. Even if we disagree with them on what they're supporting in terms of what we're seeing play out, everyone has a good side somewhere in them. I would say most people. I can't say it for everybody. But anyway, I really enjoyed tonight. It was fun. I enjoyed the guests. Thanks for being here, everybody. And I will be on tomorrow at around noon. I hope I see you then. So thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. Everybody have a great night.